Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain committed suicide this week. And as a certified crisis counselor for 13 years, I went into schools talking to students about suicide prevention. I also went into schools and organizations after a suicide had occurred, trying to educate people about suicide. So I felt that it was really important for me to come on and have an open discussion about suicide. I think that it's so important for people to talk about this taboo subject. You know, one of the things that I'm always amazed at is that if we are hit by a car and we break our leg, we will immediately go to the hospital to figure out what's wrong with our leg. Is it broken? Is it sprained? What's going on? But when it comes to feeling depressed, we have this stigma. We have this negative feeling that's associated with suicide, with depression, with mental illness. We're so afraid to talk about it that we way too often keep it inside. People are unwilling to share that piece of themselves because they don't want to be labeled as crazy or that something is wrong with them. I remember when I was in middle school, I was bullied really badly, and I was having issues at home. My parents were not getting along very well. And between those two things going on, I remember coming home and wanting to die. I would hope that I would disappear. And the few times that I did actually cut myself, the lucky thing is that it was never enough to cause death. A little bit was because I was afraid. I also had this feeling that I needed to be here for something else. I would think about how I wanted to die and not be here, but then I would think about, well, when I wake up in the morning. So there was that little piece of me, luckily for me, that kept me here. But I just remember that awful, terrible feeling in the pit of my stomach. And when I went through my depression after deciding to get a divorce, and things just kept going wrong after wrong after wrong, and just felt like nothing was going to get any better, I laid on my bed just staring at the wall in the fetal position, not able to move, not able to do anything, and not able to reach out. I mean, I really couldn't even put into words how badly I felt. And when I would try to talk about it, it didn't seem like it was going to do anything. I just had to survive those moments, at least is what it seemed like at the time. About 8 years ago now, my uncle committed suicide. And it really kind of hit home what happened with Kate Spade, because my uncle committed suicide pretty much the same way. He was very depressed and he had been asking for help. He was on medication to help with his depression. And of course, one of the side effects that a lot of people are not aware of medications for depression is suicidal thoughts, which seems like that doesn't even make sense. But he was having a lot of issues at home. He was working a lot of hours, and he just was so overwhelmed. And he got his outfit together of what he wanted to be buried in. He didn't think anybody was going to be home. And he had 2 children, and he was married. He found I don't know if it was a necktie or what it was. He tied it around his neck and then tied it around the refrigerator door handle. And he just sat into it until he died. And I think about how at any moment he could have changed his mind. He could have sat up, put his feet down. They were right there on the ground. He could have picked his feet up, and he could have kept himself from dying. But he didn't. He sat right into it and let himself, strangled himself until he passed away. And the horrible thing is that my 16-year-old nephew was the one who found him. He came home early before anybody else, and I know that my uncle did not want that to happen. But that's what did. And my uncle had written a suicide note and explained why he did what he did. Now as an adult, I've known so many people who have attempted suicide, who have completed a suicide. People have talked about suicide. it seems to be so prevalent, and where for so long suicide was actually starting to decrease, for the past few years suicide has actually been increasing in our country. There's this feeling by so many people that they can't reach out. Again, that's stigma. And people aren't reaching out. There are so many hotlines. I know in the United States, there's a 1-800-Lifeline that you can call at any time, 24/7, and talk to a certified crisis counselor. I know here in Suffolk County, New York, there's Responsive Suffolk County, which I used to actually volunteer at. They're an amazing organization, but there are amazing organizations all over the country and all over the world for people to reach out to. You're not alone if you're feeling depressed. Going through a breakup, going through loss of any kind, feeling like you're alone. I know it's hard to really put it into words at times, and I know it's really hard to reach out. Again, sometimes that depression just sucks you down so much that the thought of even picking up that phone and telling someone how badly you feel feels like it's too much to bear. But if you do reach out that hand, call a friend, talk to someone. A lot of places now also make it available for you to IM. You can make up a name so you don't even have to actually talk on the phone. Because again, I know how hard it is to talk sometimes. As I'm saying this, I'm remembering talking to a woman on the hotline, and she was so depressed you could barely hear her. She would just whisper on the phone. And she would tell me that she only knew days had gone by because she'd see the light come up and then it would get dark again. And she would lay in the fetal position all day and not eat anything. And for people who have never dealt with depression, let me just give you a little glimpse, because I experienced almost to this extent, but this woman specifically, I remember having to tell her, okay, let's sit up together and get up out of bed and just sit up. Put your feet on the ground. How about I'll just be here, put the phone down and go take a shower. When's the last time you showered? When's the last time you ate? I will sit on the phone with you as you eat. Because doing any normal activities is like the hardest thing you could possibly imagine doing, because it's like putting on a front for the world, because you're feeling like you need to pretend to be okay when everything is really falling apart inside. More women attempt suicide, but more men complete suicides. For teenagers, suicide is the third leading cause of death. For adults, I've heard anywhere from 8 to 10, and it depends on which study you look at. Those numbers shouldn't be happening. We need to support each other. We need to take care of each other. In a world where there's so much technology and there's so much ways for people to communicate, it seems like the world, instead of it getting smaller, people are feeling less social. They're feeling less connected. They're having less outlets for people to really feel connected to. So the judgment that is going on, this feeling of like, oh, people are being selfish by being suicidal. It's a feeling of being trapped, feeling of being alone, feeling like nothing matters. Why bother to continue trying? Because it's always going to be this bad and it's never going to get any better. And I know I've been down that path where I felt that way for those moments. What can I do to ever make this change? There are people out there that love you. There are people and resources out there that can help you. And I know in the United States, the mental health programs are diminishing as of recently, and that makes it more difficult. But those hotlines are still available, and there are still free services for those people who can't afford the right services through their insurance company. There is that possibility. And again, I know how hard it is to reach out, but please call someone, send me a message, send a message to someone that you care about, and let them know how badly you're feeling. Don't feel like you're wasting their time or that you're burdening them with your feelings. Your feelings are valid and they matter. No one should ever feel that alone.